Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to my friend from Elmwood-Transcona. Just briefly to say, in fairness, the honourable member for Lac St. Louis was quoting the National Post in reference to Jamie Neen and Mining Watch Canada, not the usual go-to sources for the National Post. I happen to be struggling with this bill because it is, no question, marginally better than C-38 in 2012. But we were promised in the Liberal platform that they would restore what we had before, that we would have the restoration of public trust and repair the damage of what was done when the original Canadian Environmental Assessment Act brought in by Brian Mulroney was repealed in C-38. This has not been restored. This has not been repaired. This has largely been entrenched. And what I want to ask my friend from Elmwood-Transcona is, does he have any theory as to why the Liberal government spent over $1 million on a National Energy Board expert panel and over $1 million on a separate environmental assessment expert panel that held hearings across the country? The expert panel on EA, by the way, went to 21 cities and heard from over 1,000 witnesses, produced a terrific report, and its recommendations were thrown under the proverbial bus. What on earth was going on here? And I really can't answer the question, but maybe my friend from Elmwood-Transcona can speculate.
Well, member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Well, it would be speculation indeed, because it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to have commissioned that work, have it done, and then largely ignore it. I mean, we saw something similar with the Special Committee on Electoral Reform. Again, you know, there was a budget for that committee too, and they did a lot of travel, and they heard from a number of witnesses and produced a really great report. Everybody put a little bit of water in their wine in order to clear the path for the government to move forward and make good on its election commitment, and then really without even taking time to consider that report, they decided to throw it in the waste paper bin. So it is a theme. You know, what the motivation behind that theme is not exactly clear. On the issue of electoral reform, by way of analogy for C-69, you could imagine if the government actually did create a really good proportional representation voting system, and it actually satisfied Canadians, and it satisfied those Canadians who voted for change, but they put a caveat in the bill that said the government of the day will decide in advance of an election whether they use that process or the old process, right? I mean, I don't think anybody would say that made sense, but effectively the ministerial discretion to decide whether to apply this framework to a project and then to ignore it after. So that would be the further caveat. We'd be, well, if we have the election, then we don't like the results, we'll actually just rescind it and then we'll redo the election under the old process. I mean, nobody would think that was a good idea. And effectively, that's what's happening here. So there may be virtues in terms of the change to the process, but the real problem is whether the process gets applied and whether it has to be respected once it's seen through.